My name is Bridget Holloway. I'm 46 years old. At 7:22 on a Thursday evening, my mother-in-law stood in my dining room with a real estate folder pressed against her chest and asked me in front of 12 people, "How exactly did you pay off the house?" The room smelled like pot roast, rosemary, and the vanilla candle my husband had lit because he thought it made the house seem more showable. There were two strangers at my table that night. One was a realtor named Linda Marsh, wearing a camel blazer and the careful smile of a woman who had realized too late she had walked into a family dispute. The other was a title officer named Mr. Delgado, who had come only because Mark had insisted this would be a simple listing discussion, and his mother had said she wanted everything understood before emotions got involved. Emotions. That was what they called my refusal to sign away the home I had paid for one extra principal payment at a time. My husband, Mark, stood near the sideboard with his arms folded, leaning against the cabinet where I kept the good-serving platters. His brother, Dane, sat at the end of the table, tapping one finger against his beer bottle. Dane's wife, Allison, kept looking at the fireplace because she hated confrontation unless it benefited her. My father-in-law, Roger, sat with his hearing aids turned low, pretending he could not follow the conversation. And Vivian Holloway, my mother-in-law, stood beside the chair where she had expected to preside over the decision to sell my house. She had already said, "A woman alone in a place this size is impractical." She had already said, "Mark deserves his fair share." She had already said, "Family equity should not sit trapped in walls." My husband had smiled at that last one like the phrase had been rehearsed. On the table in front of Linda was the unsigned listing agreement. Beside it sat the preliminary title report, the county deed printout, the mortgage satisfaction letter, and the payoff confirmation from First Harbor Bank. All of them had my name on them. Not Mark's. Mine. I stood near the kitchen doorway holding the green coupon binder my husband had mocked for 14 years. It was cracked at the spine, thick with receipts, bank statements, old grocery lists, clip store circulars, payment confirmations, insurance renewals, tax bills, and a plastic sleeve containing the first amortization schedule one had ever printed for that house. Mark had called it my little grandma binder. He had said I was cheap. He had said I embarrassed him at restaurants by checking receipts. He had once told his friends, while I was standing beside the grill with a paper plate in my hand, "Bridget can make $1 scream before she lets it leave the house." Everyone laughed. I laughed too, softly, because back then I still thought dignity meant not letting people know when they had cut you. That Thursday night, Vivian looked at the title report again, then at Mark, then at me. "How did you pay off the house?" she asked. I opened the binder to the blue tab marked mortgage. The plastic sleeve made a small sound under my fingers. Mark's face changed before I said a word, because he finally understood that the thing he had mocked was not a hobby. It was the record. What they did not know was that every coupon, every receipt, every overtime check, every tax refund, every utility credit, every extra mortgage payment, every refinance document, and every conversation with the bank had been saved for years. And what Mark really did not know was that when he told his family I was being selfish for refusing to sell, the county recorder had already made the answer public. The house was mine, paid in full. Before I tell you what I said to Vivian when she asked that question, tell me where you are listening from and what time it is there. Maybe you are at your kitchen table after everyone else has gone to bed. Maybe you are sitting in the car outside a grocery store with a receipt in your hand because you are the one who always knows what everything costs. If you have ever been called cheap by someone who benefited from your discipline, leave a comment. And if stories about women who were mocked, dismissed, used, and then quietly let the paperwork speak mean something to you, like this video and subscribe to Ultimate Revenge, because this is that story. But before I tell you what happened in my dining room, I need to take you back to the beginning. I bought the house on Mulberry Lane when I was 31 years old, before I married Mark, before I became a Holloway, before anyone in that family decided my patience was something they owned. It was a small white Cape Cod with blue shutters, a brick walkway, and a maple tree in the front yard that dropped leaves into the gutters every October like it was being paid by the bag. The kitchen had yellow tile from another decade. The upstairs bathroom had a sink that dripped if you did not turn the handle just right, and the basement smelled faintly of dust, laundry soap, and old rain. I loved it the moment I walked in, not because it was perfect, because it was mine to fix. I was working then as an accounts payable supervisor for a medical supply company in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. It was not glamorous work. Vendor invoices, purchase orders, payment batches, month-end reconciliation, angry calls from people who thought a missing invoice number should be everyone else's emergency. I liked the work because numbers had manners. If they did not match, there was a reason. If money was missing, it had gone somewhere. If someone claimed a payment had been made, the ledger could confirm or correct them without raising its voice. My father had died when I was 23. My mother, Ellen, raised me on the kind of practical wisdom that does not sound poetic until you survive long enough to understand it. Keep a cushion, she said. Never ignore a fee. Read the second page. If a man laughs at what keeps you safe, listen closely. She had a blue metal recipe box where she kept not only recipes but appliance warranties, emergency cash, insurance cards, and a handwritten list of every bill due each month. After she died, I found grocery receipts from 1998 folded behind a recipe for lemon bars, each one marked with tiny pencil notes about what had gone up in price. People might have called her anxious. I call her accurate. My green coupon binder began as hers. She used it for grocery circulars and rebate forms, back when rebate forms required envelopes, stamps, and the patience to cut along dotted lines. I inherited it with her kitchen table, her cast iron skillet, and the habit of checking numbers no one else wanted to look at. When I bought the house, I put the binder on the kitchen counter and made tabs. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, taxes, repairs, receipts, extra principal. The mortgage was $168,000 after my down payment, 30-year fixed, First Harbor Bank. Interest rate written on the first page in my handwriting because I wanted to understand exactly what the money would cost me over time. The banker, Mrs. Edelman, was a woman with silver hair, red glasses, and a pen she clicked only when someone was wasting her time. You can pay extra principal with no penalty, she told me at closing. Even small amounts matter if you are consistent. I asked her to show me. She turned the amortization schedule toward me and circled the interest column. This is where discipline goes to work quietly, she said. I never forgot that sentence. For the first year, I made the regular payment and nothing else. The house needed too much: furnace service, a new back door, gutter repair, a refrigerator that did not hum like a trapped bee. I painted the kitchen myself on a Saturday in March, wearing old jeans and listening to the radio, and cried when I got paint on the floor because I was exhausted, not because it mattered. By the second year, I was paying an extra $1.80 whenever I could, sometimes $1.50, sometimes $120. I treated every saved dollar like a small employee and sent it to work. Coupons helped. So did packing lunch. So did buying secondhand furniture, using library books, negotiating insurance, returning things I did not need, and refusing to pretend that convenience was always harmless. I was not joyless. I went out with friends. I bought a good coat when I needed one. I kept fresh flowers in a jar on the kitchen windowsill when the grocery store marked them down. But I did not let money leak because I was too embarrassed to look careful. That was the woman Mark Holloway met at a neighbor's barbecue in late June. He was 33, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled slightly when it was humid, and a laugh that made people turn toward him. He worked in sales for a commercial equipment company and had the easy confidence of someone who could explain less than he knew, and still convinced the room he had said plenty. He was charming. I do not deny that. Charm is not fake just because it is dangerous later. That day, he was standing beside the grill telling a story about a customer who accidentally ordered 12 industrial floor polishers instead of 2. Everyone was laughing. I was carrying a bowl of pasta salad from my kitchen to the patio because my neighbor June had run out of table space. Mark looked at me and said, "You must be Bridget from the White House." "I am. I've seen you wrestling your trash bins. You look like you take the bins personally. They roll into my hydrangeas. Then they deserve your anger." It was a small joke, a kind one. I laughed. Later, when the paper plates were soft from humidity and the kids were chasing fireflies near the fence, Mark helped me carry serving bowls back to my kitchen. He noticed the green binder on the counter. "What's that?" he asked. "Coupon binder." He grinned. "You have a binder for coupons?" "Yes." That is either terrifying or impressive. Depends how much you like saving money. I like people who know what they're doing. That line worked on me. I wish it had not. We dated for a year before he moved in. At first, Mark admired my discipline. He liked that I had a house. He liked that I cooked. He liked that bills were paid, towels were folded, and there were always batteries in the drawer. He told his friends I was solid, which I took as praise, because I had not yet learned how often men praise stability while resenting the woman who provides it. He paid me a flat amount each month for shared expenses after he moved in. It was not half the mortgage because the mortgage was mine, and the deed was mine. We discussed that clearly. I had bought the house before him. I paid the mortgage from my account. He contributed to utilities, groceries, and household costs. At first, that arrangement felt fair. Then slowly, like water finding a crack, his attitude changed. It began with jokes. At the grocery store, when I pulled coupons from an envelope, he said, "Do you want me to stand in another aisle so people don't know we're together?" I smiled because the cashier smiled. At a restaurant, when I checked the bill and noticed we had been charged for an extra beer, he said, "Bridget, it's $7. We're not auditing the Pentagon." I said, "It is not our $7. He rolled his eyes. At a 4th of July cookout, when I rinsed and saved the plastic containers from a veggie tray, he told his brother Dane, "She was born during the Depression in a past life." Dane laughed. Vivian laughed louder. I laughed too. That was one of my mistakes. Not the binder, not the coupons, not the saving, the laughing. Every time I laughed with them at my own expense, I taught them the price was low. Mark proposed in my kitchen on a rainy November evening. No restaurant. No candles beyond the one I had lit because the house smelled like onions after dinner. He had hidden the ring in the drawer where I kept measuring spoons, which was risky because I could have found it while making muffins. The ring was beautiful, simple. Oval sapphire with 2 small diamonds, because I had once told him diamonds alone made me nervous. He got down on one knee on the yellow tile and said, "You are the safest place I have ever known." I believed him. That is the part that still hurts. We married the following September in the backyard under the maple tree. 70 guests. Folding chairs. White lights. My friend June made the cake because she was a better baker than anyone in Westfield wanted to admit. I wore an ivory dress that cost less than $500 and felt like myself. Mark's family teased me about the budget wedding until they saw how beautiful it was. Vivian said, "Well, Bridget does know how to stretch a dollar." She meant it as praise and insult at the same time. I accepted both because I was happy. The first years of marriage were not terrible. Stories like this often sound cleaner if the villain arrives with horns on the first page. Mark did not. He was affectionate. He fixed the porch railing. He brought me coffee in bed on Saturdays. He danced with me in the kitchen when the radio played old songs. He called me Bridge in a voice that made the name feel private. But money revealed him. It often does. Mark liked ease. Not luxury exactly, though he enjoyed appearing generous. He liked buying rounds, upgrading flights, ordering appetizers for the table, choosing the better grill, replacing a phone before the old one failed. He liked the feeling of not checking. To him, not checking was freedom. To me, not checking was how people ended up afraid to open envelopes. We had disagreements. Quiet ones at first. "Did you spend $420 at Breyer Sporting Goods?" I asked one evening, standing at the kitchen counter with the credit card statement. He looked up from his phone. "Golf stuff. You said you were just getting gloves. They had a sale." "A sale does not mean free." He sighed. "Here we go." "Mark?" "I work hard, Bridget." "So do I." "I didn't say you didn't." "You implied I shouldn't ask." He leaned back. "No, I implied I don't want to live like every receipt is a crime scene." That line became one of his favorites, receipt crime scene. He used it at dinner parties, he used it with his mother, he used it with Dane, who had his own talent for spending money he expected others to rescue. Vivian loved the jokes because they confirmed what she already believed, that I was practical in a way that made other people feel judged. Vivian Holloway was the kind of woman who arranged flowers before telling bad news. She had silver blonde hair, perfect nails, and a way of saying dear that made it sound like a small curtain closing. She came from a family that once had money and still had expectations. Her husband, Roger, had worked for the county. Steady pension. Good benefits. Enough to live well if someone checked spending, which Vivian did not. She adored Mark. She tolerated me. At Sunday dinners, she praised my cooking and then suggested I buy nicer serving dishes. She complimented my house and then called it quaint. She told me I was lucky Mark was so patient with my little systems. Once, after I brought homemade rolls to Easter, she said, "You know, dear, you don't have to prove you're economical all the time." I was setting the basket on her dining table. "I like baking." "Of course." Her smile said she did not believe me. Dane was worse because he did not bother with softness. Mark's younger brother had started and abandoned 3 businesses before 40. A boat detailing company, a sports memorabilia website, and a food truck that never passed inspection. Each failure became someone else's fault. Bad timing, bad partners, bad government, bad luck, never bad math. He called me Binder Bridget. At a family barbecue, he held up a beer and said, "Careful, Bridge might write down who drank what and invoice us later." Everyone laughed. I was carrying a tray of deviled eggs. Mark laughed, too. That night, while loading the dishwasher, I said, "I don't like when Dane calls me that." Mark opened the refrigerator. "He's joking." "I know, I don't like it." "Then don't make it so easy." The dishwasher hummed. I turned slowly. "What does that mean?" He shrugged. "You do have binders for everything." "I have records." Records, binders, coupons, whatever. You can't be surprised people notice. People notice because you make jokes first. He looked tired, which was often when he became careless. "Bridget, I love you, but sometimes it's embarrassing." There it was, embarrassing. The word landed on the kitchen floor between us. I remember the exact sound of a spoon shifting in the dishwasher basket. Small metal against plastic. Ordinary. Ruthless. I said, "Paying bills on time embarrasses you?" "No. Acting like we're one missed coupon away from bankruptcy embarrasses me." "We are not." "Then live like it." I looked around the kitchen, the painted cabinets, the old tile, the mortgage statement under the magnet on the fridge, the green binder on the counter. "I am," I said. He did not understand. That was the night I moved the mortgage tab to the front of the binder. Not because of the argument alone, because that word, embarrassing, clarified something. Mark enjoyed the security my discipline created, but he wanted it hidden so he could pretend security was his natural environment. The same month, I made my first large extra principal payment, $2,000 from my annual bonus. I wrote it down in blue ink. Bonus applied to principal, February 12th, 2012. Then I printed the confirmation and placed it in the plastic sleeve. Over the next decade, I became very good at quiet acceleration. Raises went partly to retirement, partly to emergency savings, partly to principal. Tax refunds went to principal. Rebate checks went to principal. Credit card rewards went to principal. Grocery savings went into a separate account named Maple, because the house had the maple tree out front and I did not want Mark seeing an account called mortgage payoff and asking questions he would turn into jokes. I did not hide money from him in a way that harmed the marriage. The bills were paid. His contributions went where agreed. Our household was stable, but the mortgage was mine, the house was mine, and the extra payments came from my income, my savings, my discipline, and sometimes the difference between what Mark mocked and what I quietly kept. If I saved $1.18 at the grocery store, I transferred $1.18 to Maple. If I negotiated $1.22 off the internet bill, Maple. If I returned a dress I did not need, Maple. If I worked overtime during the end of quarter rush, Maple. If Mark ordered expensive takeout after saying there was nothing in the fridge, I made soup the next night from what was already there and moved what I would have spent into Maple. This was not deprivation, it was direction. Mark never noticed because he did not want to notice. He liked results, not methods. The pantry was full. The taxes were paid. The insurance renewed. The furnace serviced. The roof replaced after the hailstorm because I had kept an emergency fund. He praised luck when preparation saved us. After the roof repair, he told Dane, "We got lucky, the insurance covered most of it." I was standing at the sink washing coffee mugs. The insurance covered most of it because I had reviewed the policy, challenged the first adjuster's report, submitted photos, hired an independent roofer to document damage, and spent 3 lunch breaks on the phone. Luck. I added the claim file to the binder. Vivian noticed the house improving, but not the mechanism behind it. She liked sitting in my living room and saying, "This place has good bones," as if she had not spent years calling it small. She suggested we knock down a wall, expand the kitchen, redo the upstairs, add a sunroom, replace the front door with something more impressive. Mark loved those conversations. He liked imagining the house as more than it was. He did not like discussing what more would cost. Sometimes he would say, "We could sell and move into something newer." I would say, "We can talk when we can afford it." He would say, "You always make everything sound like a dental procedure." By then, we had been married 8 years, the jokes had grooves. Everyone knew where to step. At family dinners, Vivian would say, "Bridget, did you bring coupons for dessert?" Dane would ask whether I had audited the potato salad. Mark would kiss my temple and say, "Don't start her, she'll make a spreadsheet." I would smile. Then I would go home and update the spreadsheet. The breaking point came at Mark's 45th birthday party. It was in our backyard under the maple tree. I cooked for 30 people because Mark said catering felt impersonal, and then invited 6 more coworkers after I had already shopped. I made pulled pork, coleslaw, baked beans, roasted vegetables, 2 cakes, and a cooler full of drinks. I arranged folding tables, borrowed chairs from June, strung lights, and made sure Vivian had the shaded seat she liked, even though she always said my yard was a bit rustic. Mark was in a generous mood. He had received a promotion to regional sales director, which sounded more stable than it was because his company had been restructuring for months. He wore a new linen shirt and told the story of his first big commission 3 times. After dinner, Someone asked how we managed to host so many people without losing our minds. Mark raised his beer and said, "Easy. Bridget has been saving napkins since 1989. People laughed. I was used to that. Then Dane said, "If Mark ever disappears, check the basement. She probably has him down there sorting receipts." More laughter. Vivian added, "Well, someone has to keep him in line. Bridget runs this place like a coupon prison." Mark leaned toward his coworker Paul and said, "The woman can squeeze a nickel so hard Jefferson files a complaint." Everyone laughed louder. I stood near the patio table holding a bowl of coleslaw. The bowl was heavy. My wrist ached. I looked at my husband's face and saw something that tired me more than anger could have. He was proud of the joke. Not careless, proud. He liked being the man with the ridiculous wife who handled everything. Paul's wife, a woman named Marcy, looked at me. She did not laugh. She glanced at the food, the lights, the tables, the yard, then back at Mark with a faint expression I recognized as secondhand embarrassment. For him, not me. That helped. I set the coleslaw down. Mark said, "Careful, Bridge. Don't charge me a serving fee." I wiped my hands on a towel. Then I walked into the house. No one followed for 7 minutes. I know because the kitchen clock was above the stove, and I watched it while standing at the counter with both hands flat against the laminate. 7 minutes. Then Mark came in, still smiling. "Hey," he said, "you okay?" "No." His smile faded a little. "What happened?" "I'm tired of being the joke." He sighed. "Bridget, it was a party. It was my house, my food, my work, and my name." "Your name?" "The one everyone laughed at." He rubbed his forehead. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be?" I looked at him. "No, I think I've been making it smaller than it is." He glanced toward the patio, where people were still laughing. "Can we not do this now?" "That is what you always ask." "Because you pick bad times." "No, Mark. You create public insults and ask for private consequences." He stared at me. That sentence surprised both of us. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I continued, quieter. "I will finish hosting your birthday because I said I would. Tomorrow, we are talking." He laughed once, disbelieving. "Are you scheduling a marital audit?" I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said, "Yes." The next morning, he claimed he had a headache. We did not talk, but I did something else. I pulled a full mortgage statement, updated the payoff projection, reviewed the Maple account, and called First Harbor Bank. Mrs. Adelman had retired by then, but the mortgage department still had patient people if you waited through enough recorded menus. A woman named Priya confirmed the remaining balance. $31, 842.17. I wrote it down. Then I looked at the Maple account. There was enough. Not because of one dramatic windfall. Because of years of small choices that had been laughed at while they compounded. I did not pay it that day. I waited 3 weeks. Not for Mark. For myself. There is a difference between acting from clarity and acting from injury. I needed to know which one was moving my hand. During those 3 weeks, Mark continued as usual. He complained about my grocery envelopes. He ordered a $1.90 steak dinner with clients and forgot to submit the reimbursement. He told Vivian I was still mad about napkins. He did not ask once what I meant by being the joke. So on a Tuesday morning in June at 9:15, I walked into First Harbor Bank with the green binder in my tote bag and asked to speak with a loan officer. The woman who came out was named Angela Reed. She had short black hair, silver hoop earrings, and a calm face that belonged in difficult rooms. She reviewed my account, my identification, and the payoff request. "You understand this will satisfy the mortgage in full," she said. "Yes." "The deed remains as recorded." "Yes." "Sole owner, Bridget Holloway, formerly Bridget Ellis, acquired before marriage." "Yes." She looked at me over her glasses. Would you like time to think? I've had 14 years. Her face softened. Then let's do it. The wire transfer cleared at 10:48. Angela printed the confirmation. I placed it in the binder. 2 weeks later, the official mortgage satisfaction letter arrived by certified mail. I signed for it at the front door while Mark was at work. The envelope was thick, white, and ordinary looking. I sat at the kitchen table before opening it. The house was quiet, except for the refrigerator hum and the maple leaves tapping against the window. Paid in full. Mortgage satisfied. Lien released. I read those phrases until they stopped looking like bank language and began looking like air. I did not cry immediately. I made tea. I washed the cup. I swept the kitchen floor. Then I sat on the bottom stair with the letter in my lap and cried so quietly even the house seemed to listen. The binder had a new tab after that. Paid off. I did not tell Mark that day. That may sound dishonest, but here is the truth. Mark had stopped treating the house like something I had built and begun treating it like something he could eventually cash. I needed to understand the legal position before giving him information he would turn into pressure. So I called an attorney. Her name was Caroline Bexley, and she worked out of a narrow brick office downtown with ferns in the window and a receptionist who offered coffee strong enough to remove doubt. Caroline had silver-streaked hair, blunt bangs, and the kind of directness that made me sit straighter. I brought everything. Deed, mortgage, payoff letter, bank statements, marriage certificate, household contribution agreement we had drafted informally when Mark moved in, tax records, insurance, repair invoices. Caroline read for 20 minutes without speaking. Then she said, "The house is premarital property titled solely in your name. The mortgage was solely in your name. His contributions may complicate certain equitable discussions if there is a divorce, depending on documentation and jurisdiction. But he is not on the deed. He cannot sell it. He cannot list it. He cannot force your signature without legal proceedings. And based on these records, he has no simple claim to ownership." I exhaled. She looked at the binder. "You've kept excellent records." "People make fun of it." "People often make fun of the thing that will later inconvenience them." I wrote that sentence down after I left. The next year was the year everything Mark had ignored began asking for payment. His company restructured again, and his commission structure changed. He made less, but spent as if he made more. Dane's latest business, a bourbon-themed catering concept called Barrel and Board, collapsed after 6 months and left him owing vendors, 2 friends, and Vivian. Vivian and Roger had taken out a home equity line to help him, then discovered retirement income feels smaller when adult children treat it like weather. Mark began talking about unlocking options. That was the phrase. At first it was casual. We should look at the market. Houses on Mulberry are going crazy. Then practical. If we sold now, we could downsize and invest the difference. Then familial. Mom and Dad are stressed. It would be nice if we had flexibility to help. Then entitled. We've been sitting on equity while everyone else is trying to survive. I noticed the word we. I always noticed the word we when it arrived near my house. I said, "I'm not selling." He said, "You always shut things down." I answered, "You answered for both of us. It is my house." His face changed. That was the first time I had said it so plainly in years. "Our house," he said. "The house is in my name." "We're married." "Yes." "I've lived here 14 years." "Yes." "I've paid into this household." "You paid agreed shared expenses." He stared at me. "That is such a Bridget sentence." "What kind of sentence is that?" "Cold, technical. Like you're preparing for court." I looked at him. "Are you asking me to prepare for court?" He threw up his hands. "I'm asking my wife to think like a partner." No, you're asking me to sell the house I bought and paid for so your brother's bad decisions and your parents' generosity can be spread across my walls. His mouth tightened. That is cruel. No, I said, it is itemized. He hated that. Over the next month, the pressure became organized. Vivian called first. Dear, Mark says you are anxious about selling. I'm not anxious. I'm unwilling. She made a soft sound. Sometimes women attach to houses because they represent control. Sometimes women attach to houses because they paid for them. She paused. Well, that was sharp. It was clear. She tried a different path. Your father-in-law and I are not asking for charity. I'm glad. But families help each other. I agree. Families also respect boundaries. Boundaries are easier when no one is struggling. Vivian Dane's business failed. That is not my mortgage's emergency. She did not like that. 2 days later, Dane called. Mark says you're blocking the sale. There is no sale. You know, Bridge, you act like you're the only adult who ever paid bills. I was standing in the laundry room folding towels. No, I act like the adult who paid this one. He laughed. Come on, you and Mark are married. Half that equity is his. Tell Mark to have an attorney put that in writing. Silence. Then he said, You've gotten mean. No, I've gotten specific. By then, Mark had stopped joking about the binder. He had started hating it. I could tell by the way he looked at it when it sat on the kitchen table. Like a witness he had once thought was furniture. One evening, I came home and found him opening the desk drawer where I kept household files. What are you doing? I asked. He startled, looking for the insurance policy. Why? I wanted to see replacement value. You could have asked. You're not exactly sharing information. I set my purse down. Which information? Don't do that. Do what? Answer every question like a deposition. Then stop creating evidence. He slammed the drawer shut. You know what, Bridget? This is why people laugh at you. You can't just live. Everything is a record. Everything is a receipt. Everything is some little note in your sad green binder. The words hung there. Sad green binder. I looked at him. The man who had once called me the safest place he had ever known now sounded angry that I had built safety too well for him to control. I said, Do not go through my files again? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Your files? Our house? Our marriage? Our life? But your files? Yes. He stepped closer. You are not better than everyone because you save grocery receipts. No, I said. I am safer than everyone who refuses to read them. That night, I moved the binder to a locked file cabinet in my office. Not because I feared Mark would destroy it, because I no longer trusted him not to try. The family meeting was Vivian's idea. She did not call it that. She called it dinner. Let's all sit down calmly, she said. No pressure, just information. I know a wonderful realtor who can give a realistic picture. Sometimes numbers make things less emotional. Numbers. From Vivian, who had never met a price tag she could not ignore if someone else paid it. I almost declined. Then Carolyn Bexley, my attorney, said, Let them bring the realtor. I was sitting in her office, the binder on my lap. Why? Because if they are operating under false assumptions, a professional record can correct them in front of witnesses. I don't want a scene. You are not making one by refusing to sign something you do not owe. She leaned back. Who is the realtor? Linda Marsh. Reputable. Vivian also mentioned a title person. Caroline's eyebrow lifted. They are trying to make it look inevitable. Yes. Good, she said. Inevitable works both directions. So I agreed. But I prepared. I requested a certified copy of the deed from the county recorder. I requested an updated mortgage satisfaction record. I printed the First Harbor payoff confirmation. I printed statements from the Maple account showing deposits from my pay, bonuses, tax refunds, and savings transfers. I printed the household expense agreement Mark and I had signed when he moved in, informal but dated and clear. I printed 14 years of property tax payments from my account. I printed insurance premium confirmations. I printed repair invoices. I printed the attorney summary Carolyn had written, not legal advice for them, but a statement of title status. Then I placed everything behind tabs in the green binder. The binder was heavier than it looked. So was I. On the day of the dinner, I made pot roast because Vivian had once said it was the only thing I cooked that tasted company appropriate. I set the table with white plates, cloth napkins, and the silverware my mother left me. I lit the vanilla candle. I placed a pitcher of water on the sideboard, not because I was trying to impress them, because composure is easier in a clean room. Mark watched me from the kitchen doorway. "This doesn't have to be adversarial," he said. "Then don't make it adversarial. I just want everyone to understand the options." "I understand the options. You haven't even heard Linda. I know what a sale is." He exhaled sharply. "Please don't embarrass me tonight." I looked at him. All those years of jokes. Coupon prison, receipt crime scene. Binder Bridget. Making me cheap in front of friends, family, co-workers, neighbors. Please don't embarrass me. I wiped the counter once with a damp cloth. I won't need to. He did not understand what that meant. They arrived at 6:30. Vivian entered first, carrying a bottle of wine and the confidence of someone who believed she had already won because she had scheduled the room. Roger followed with a tired smile. Dane and Allison came next. Linda Marsh arrived at 6:40, carrying a leather portfolio. Mr. Delgado arrived 5 minutes later with a slim folder and an apologetic expression. "I usually don't attend listing dinners," he said quietly when I took his coat. "I assumed?" He looked relieved that I did not blame him. At dinner, Vivian was warm in the way people become warm before asking for something. She complimented the roast. She praised the centerpiece. She said the house looked so loved, which was new. Mark poured wine generously. Dane made one joke about whether I had calculated the cost per serving, then stopped when no one laughed except him. After dinner, Linda opened her folder. "Thank you for having me," she said. "The market in this neighborhood is strong. A home like this, with the improvements you've made, could list between $420,000 and $455,000, depending on timing and inspection." Vivian looked at Mark with satisfaction. Dane whistled. Mark's shoulders relaxed. I folded my hands in my lap. Linda continued, "Of course, any sale would require owner authorization, title verification, payoff information if there is a mortgage, and signatures from the legal owner or owners." Vivian waved one hand. "Of course, that's why we wanted everything clear." Mr. Delgado opened his folder. "I pulled preliminary public records based on the property address," he said. "This is not a final title commitment, but it confirms current recorded ownership and lien status." Mark looked bored. That was the last moment he had the luxury. Mr. Delgado adjusted his glasses. "The deed shows Bridget Holloway, formerly Bridget Ellis, as sole title holder. Acquisition predates the marriage. The mortgage with First Harbor Bank was recorded and later satisfied. The satisfaction was recorded with the county on June 27, 2022. There is no current mortgage lien of record." Linda looked at me, then down at her notes. Vivian frowned. "I'm sorry," she said. "No current mortgage?" "That is correct," Mr. Delgado said. Mark's head turned toward me. Dane said, "Wait, the house is paid off?" I did not answer. The title officer had. Vivian looked at the report again, as if the paper might become more cooperative under pressure. Then she asked the question, "How exactly did you pay off the house?" I stood and picked up the green binder from the sideboard. The room followed it. Funny how the same object could be invisible for years and then become the only thing anyone saw. I placed it on the table, opened the blue tab, marked mortgage, and removed the payoff confirmation. First Harbor Bank payoff, I said. Wire transfer completed on June 7, 2022. Mortgage satisfaction recorded later that month. Mark stared at the paper. His lips parted slightly. Vivian said, "But with what money?" I turned to the Maple account tab. My income, bonuses, tax refunds, savings transfers, grocery savings, utility credits, rebates, overtime, everything documented. Dane laughed once. "You're saying coupons paid off a house?" I looked at him. "No, Dane. Discipline did. Coupons were just one tool." Linda pressed her lips together, not smiling, but almost. Mark reached for the statement. I let him take it. He scanned the pages, slower than I expected. I watched him recognize numbers he had mocked without knowing where they went. $18, $42, $97, $110, $500, $2,000, $31, 842.17. Tiny soldiers marching toward freedom. He looked up. "You paid the mortgage off 2 years ago?" "Yes." "And you didn't tell me?" "No." His voice sharpened. "You hid this from me." I opened another tab and placed our household contribution agreement on the table. I paid the mortgage from my account before and during the marriage. You contributed the agreed monthly household amount. You were not responsible for the mortgage. You also told me, many times, that my record-keeping was embarrassing. That doesn't justify hiding a paid-off house from your husband? No, I said. Your plan to pressure me to sell it does. Vivian stood straighter. Bridget, that is unfair. We came here to discuss what is best for the family. I looked at her. Which family? She blinked. This family. The one that called me cheap for years, the one that laughed at my binder, the one that now wants the equity created by the habits it mocked? Roger shifted in his chair. Allison looked down at her plate. Dane said, "Nobody wants your money." I turned to him. "Then why are you here?" No one spoke for 6 seconds. Dane's face darkened. Mark said, "Don't talk to my brother like that." I looked at my husband. "Mark, your brother's failed business is not a lien on my house." Vivian gasped softly. "That was cruel." "No," I said. "That was title clarity." Mr. Delgado looked down at his folder. Linda took a sip of water. The vanilla candle flickered between us. Mark pushed back his chair. "I have lived here for 14 years. Yes. I helped with repairs. You fixed the porch railing and painted the guest room. I have receipts for the roof, furnace, taxes, insurance, plumbing, electrical, appliances, and mortgage." "Of course you do," he snapped. There it was again, the contempt returning because facts had not favored him. I said, "Yes, of course I do." He stood, red creeping up his neck. "You make everything about money." "No, Mark, you made jokes about money until you needed mine." The room went still. Vivian said, "That is not how a wife speaks." I looked at her. That is how an owner speaks when someone brings a realtor to her table without her consent. Linda quietly closed the listing folder. It made a soft leather sound. "I should clarify," she said. "I cannot list this property without Mrs. Holloway's signed authorization." Mark said, "We know that." Linda looked at him. "I'm not sure everyone did." I appreciated her for that. Mr. Delgado added, "Nor can a sale proceed without title holder consent." Vivian's face tightened. "Surely marital rights count for something." "They may be relevant in certain legal contexts," Mr. Delgado said carefully. "But for purposes of listing and sale authorization, the recorded owner controls the property." Recorded owner. 2 words can open windows. I removed the final document from the binder. Carolyn's title summary. My attorney has already reviewed the situation, I said. Any further discussion about ownership, equity, or sale pressure can go through her office. Mark looked at me as if I had slapped him. You hired a lawyer? Yes. When? When you started calling my house our option? My house, he repeated bitterly. Yes. His face changed then. Not softened. Not humbled. Exposed. He had spent years living inside my competence, mistaking access for ownership. The title report had closed the door. Vivian sat down slowly. How did none of us know? She whispered. I looked at her. Because none of you ever asked how the bills were paid. You only laughed at how I kept track. That sentence did not explode. It settled, the way dust settles after a shelf has finally been moved. Roger cleared his throat. I'm sorry, Bridget, he said. Vivian turned toward him, startled. He looked at her, then at Mark, then at me. We benefited from jokes that weren't kind. Roger had never said more than 10 necessary words at family dinners. That night, his 11 words did more than everyone else's speeches. Dane stood. This is ridiculous. Keep your house. I intend to. He muttered something and left through the front door without thanking me for dinner. Allison followed, pausing near the doorway. For what it's worth, she said quietly, I knew Dane shouldn't have asked. Then why did you come? She swallowed. Because I'm used to going along. I nodded. I hope that changes for you. Her eyes filled and then she left. Vivian remained seated. Her face had lost its arrangement. Without polish, she looked older and more frightened than I expected. Mark told us there was enough equity to solve several problems, she said. Mark snapped. Mom. She ignored him. He said you were being difficult. I looked at him. He stared at the sideboard. Vivian continued, quieter. He did not say the house was only yours. I closed the binder. He knew. That was the third silence. The first had been title. The second had been payoff. The third was character. Mark sat back down. Bridge, he said. I almost flinched at the old nickname. No. He blinked. You don't even know what I'm going to say. Yes, I do. I made mistakes. You made jokes, then assumptions, then plans. His jaw tightened. I was trying to help my family. At my expense. Our family. Your family did not become mine by laughing at me until they needed equity. Vivian looked down. Mark's voice lowered. You're enjoying this. I opened the binder again, slowly, and turned it toward him. Look at this. He did not move. Look. Something in my voice made him obey. I pointed to the receipts tab. Years of grocery receipts, rebate checks, utility negotiations, repairs, overtime records, all clipped and dated. Not every receipt, not madness, not obsession. A record of effort. This is not enjoyment, I said. This is time. This is lunch I packed when you ate out. This is the furnace I replaced instead of taking a vacation. This is the insurance claim I fought while you told people we got lucky. This is the $7 restaurant error you thought was beneath notice. This is the coupon you laughed at while drinking coffee in a kitchen whose mortgage I was quietly killing. This is my life not leaking. His eyes stayed on the page. For once, he did not have a joke ready. Vivian whispered, Mark. He looked at his mother. She looked ashamed, not enough to fix everything, but enough that her next words were different. You should apologize. He laughed in disbelief. To you? To her, Vivian said. Mark looked at me. I waited. The apology did not come. That mattered too. He stood again, slower this time. I can't do this. No, I said. You can't control this. He left through the back door, not the front. I heard the screen door slam, then the sound of his truck starting in the driveway. Nobody chased him. For once, the room allowed the person who caused discomfort to leave with it. Linda gathered her papers. "Mrs. Holloway," she said, "I'm sorry for my part in this. I was led to believe this was a joint decision." "I know. If you ever decide to sell on your own terms, I would be honored to help. But I will not contact you unless you ask. Thank you." Mr. Delgado nodded politely and left with her. Roger went to sit on the porch because he said he needed air. Vivian remained at the table, looking at the green binder. "I thought you were anxious," she said. "I was careful." She nodded slowly. "I thought careful meant afraid. Sometimes it means free." Her eyes filled. "I have been unkind to you." "Yes." She breathed in. "I am sorry." I believed she meant it in that moment. I also knew apologies made under the pressure of paperwork can evaporate when pride returns. So I did not rush to make her comfortable. "Thank you," I said. She looked around the dining room, the candle, the plates, the maple cabinet. The home she had tried to convert into a solution for problems I did not create. "What happens now?" she asked. "I clean up dinner." She almost smiled, then stopped herself. "I mean with Mark." "I don't know yet." But that was not entirely true. I knew more than I said. By the time Mark came home that night, I had washed the dishes, put away the leftovers, wiped the table, and placed the binder on the center of it. Not hidden, not open, just there. He walked in at 11:35. His face looked gray with exhaustion and anger. He smelled like beer, though not enough to be drunk. He saw the binder and laughed once under his breath. "That thing," he said. "Yes. It's like you were waiting for this." No, I was prepared for something I hoped would not happen. He sat across from me. We had sat at that table so many times. Breakfasts, tax forms, Christmas cards, arguments over paint colors, Sunday coupons, quiet dinners. The table had a small burn mark near one edge from the year Mark set down a too-hot pan and blamed the trivet for being too far away. "I feel humiliated," he said. "I know. In my own family. You humiliated me in your family for years." He looked away. "I didn't mean it like that." "You liked how it sounded." That landed. He rubbed his face. "I was embarrassed." "By me?" "By needing you." I did not expect honesty. It came out rough, almost resentful. He continued. "You always had everything handled. Bills, repairs, taxes, groceries, the house. I felt like a guest in my own life sometimes. So you made me the joke." "I guess." "No, Mark, not I guess." His eyes hardened briefly, then softened in defeat. "Yes." I waited. He said, "I'm sorry." There it was, late, small, not enough, but present. I looked at the binder. "I believe you are sorry tonight." He looked hurt. "That's not the same as accepting it?" "No." "What do you want?" "I want you to move out for a while." He stared. "What?" I packed a bag. "It's in the guest room. You can stay with your parents or rent somewhere. I need space." "This is my home too." "It has been your home," I said. "It is not your property." His eyes flashed. "You're really going to keep saying that?" "Yes." The green binder sat between us like a quiet judge. He looked at it, then at me. "And if I refuse?" I slid Caroline's card across the table. "Then call my attorney." He stared at the card. No one spoke for 11 seconds. Then he stood. He did not slam anything this time. That was new. He slept in the guest room and left before dawn. The weeks after were not cinematic. Real aftermath rarely is. It is paperwork, awkward calls, text messages, relatives choosing language carefully, and the strange quiet of a house after someone's daily noises leave. Mark stayed with Vivian and Roger for 10 days, then moved into a short-term rental. He called twice. I did not answer. He texted apologies that became defensive by the third sentence. I did not respond to those either. Caroline helped me draft a temporary separation agreement covering household items, mail, access to the property, and financial boundaries. Mark signed it after his attorney told him to. Vivian called once. I wanted you to know Mark is angry, but he is also embarrassed. Embarrassment can be useful if he learns from it. She sighed. I suppose I earned that. You did. She was quiet. Dane asked if we could still work something out about the house. No. I told him no. That surprised me. Thank you. I should have told him no sooner. Yes. Another pause. Roger says hello. Tell him I said hello. It was a strange little conversation. Not reconciliation, not closeness, but a different map. Dane did not apologize. He did stop calling me Binder Bridget, at least to my face. I heard from Allison months later that he had tried once at Vivian's table and Roger had said, enough. Sometimes change begins with one person refusing to laugh. As for Mark, he went to counseling. I know because he told me, and because he's stopped sending apologies shaped like excuses. The first real letter came 2 months after he moved out. Handwritten, 3 pages. No jokes. He wrote that he had confused being provided for with being diminished. He wrote that my competence made him feel unnecessary, and instead of becoming more useful, he made me smaller in public. He wrote that he had treated my caution as fear because he did not want to examine his own. He wrote that asking me to sell the house for his family's problems was wrong. I read it twice. Then I placed it in the binder under a new tab. Mark. Not because the letter fixed us. Because the record deserved all kinds of truth. We did not divorce immediately. We separated for 8 months. During that time, I learned the sound of my house without him. The furnace kicking on. The maple branches and wind. The refrigerator hum. The click of the front door lock at night when I turned it myself. The quiet was not lonely at first. It was spacious. I painted the kitchen. Not yellow this time. Warm white with green trim. I replaced the dripping bathroom sink. I turned the guest room into an office and put the green binder on a shelf where sunlight could reach it. I planted lavender along the front walk. I bought a chair for the porch that cost more than I would once have allowed, and I paid cash because discipline does not mean denying yourself beauty. It means choosing beauty without fear. One Saturday in October, I sat on that porch with coffee while leaves fell from the maple tree. The house was paid off. The air smelled like wood smoke. A child rode past on a bicycle. June waved from across the street. For the first time in years, I felt the house breathe with me. Mark came over in November to talk. He asked first. That mattered. We sat at the dining room table. No family, no realtor, no title officer, no candle. Just 2 people and the old wood between us. He looked thinner, quieter, less polished. He placed his hands flat on the table. I don't want the house, he said. I waited. I don't want money from it. I don't want to sell it. I don't want to punish you for protecting yourself. Okay? I don't know if you still want to be married to me. I don't know either. He nodded. I understand. That was the first time in our marriage he did not argue with an answer that made him uncomfortable. He continued, I drove past a grocery store last week and saw a woman with coupons. My first thought was a joke. I looked at him. Then I thought, she is probably holding 3 families together and some idiot is making fun of her. I did not smile, but something in my chest loosened by one thread. I was the idiot, he said. Yes, I know. We talked for 2 hours. Not perfectly, not magically. He still wanted reassurance more quickly than I could give it. I still wanted to present evidence for feelings, because evidence had kept me safe when words failed. But for the first time, Mark listened without reaching for humor like a shield. We stayed separated through the holidays. At Thanksgiving, I ate with June and her daughters. We made too much stuffing and played cards. I brought the pie. No one asked if it had a coupon attached. On Christmas Eve, Vivian dropped off a small wrapped gift and did not come inside. It was a leather document case. The card said, "For the records that saved what we should have respected." I stood in the doorway holding it for a long time. By spring, Mark and I began structured counseling together. I will not pretend every story ends with divorce or reconciliation cleanly. Real life is messier. We built something cautious. He moved back after 14 months, not into ownership, not into entitlement, but into a marriage with written financial agreements, separate property acknowledged, shared expenses transparent, and one household rule he wrote himself on a piece of paper and taped inside the pantry door. No jokes about what keeps us safe. The first time Dane came over after Mark moved back, he saw the rule and laughed. Mark said, "It's not funny." Dane looked startled. Mark repeated, "It was never funny." That apology, spoken to the room instead of whispered to me, mattered more than flowers would have. Vivian visits differently now. She brings receipts when she asks me for help reviewing a bill. The first time she did it, she looked embarrassed. I did not make her feel better. I made tea, took the bill, and said, "Let's look." Roger turns his hearing aids up at dinner. Allison left Dane for 6 months, then came back with her own checking account and a face that looked less tired. I do not know what will happen there. I only know she once texted me a photo of a binder she bought, navy blue, with tabs. The caption said, "Starting small." I replied, "Starting counts. The house on Mulberry Lane remains mine." That sentence still feels like standing barefoot on solid ground. Mark lives here with me now, but he knows the difference between living somewhere and owning the woman who kept it standing. His name is not on the deed. His pride survived. That was good for him to learn. The green binder is still in my office. The spine has been repaired with clear tape. The old coupon pages are mostly gone now because apps replaced paper circulars, and my knees dislike kneeling on grocery store floors to read shelf tags. But the tabs remain. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, taxes, repairs, receipts, paid off, Mark. And one more tab, freedom. Inside that tab is the mortgage satisfaction letter, the photo I took of the house the morning after I paid it off, Caroline's card, and a small note in my mother's handwriting that I found tucked inside the original binder after she died. Never be ashamed of what keeps the roof over your head. I wish I had read that note earlier. Maybe I did, in other ways. People think revenge is a dramatic thing. A slammed door, a shouted confession, a ruined reputation. Sometimes, maybe. But the revenge that changed my life was quieter. It was an amortization schedule. A coupon doubled on canned tomatoes. A bank confirmation printed at 10:48 in the morning. A title officer reading a county record aloud. A realtor closing a folder. A mother-in-law asking how I paid off the house and having to hear that the answer was every careful thing she had laughed at. I did not beat Mark by paying off the house. I freed myself from needing his respect before I respected my own labor. That is different. For years, my husband mocked my coupon binder because he thought it represented fear. He did not understand it represented vision. He saw a woman saving receipts. I saw a woman building an exit from uncertainty, one line item at a time. He saw cheapness. I saw options. He saw embarrassment. I saw proof. And when his family came to my table to turn my home into their solution, the binder did what it had always done. It held the numbers still long enough for the truth to stand up. Thank you for staying with me through this story. Stories like this are not really about coupons, binders, mortgages, or houses. They are about the women who quietly keep families safe while being mocked for the very discipline everyone later needs. If this story meant something to you, subscribe to Ultimate Revenge for more stories about family betrayal, quiet women, silent comebacks, and the documents that finally speak. And tell me, if someone laughed for years at the habits that saved your home, would you explain yourself one more time? Or would you open the binder and let the record answer?